Dialogue is a big thing on the political agenda. However, in this segment, we'll be speaking about dialogue in general. We'll be touching a little bit about the effect of dialogue itself. And for this, we are joined with Dr. Sam Hindawy, the consultant of leaders and administrative development. Hello and welcome to the show, sir.
Hello.
Hello, doctor. I don't think we'll be talking about the current scene maybe, or the current events going on in Egypt and the political scene here in Egypt, but we can talk about the idea of dialogue, the national dialogue. Tell me more about it.
Of course. A dialogue is basically an exchange of ideas between two parties. That exchange might happen in conformity when both parties see the general vision and their expectations match harmoniously. However, it may get into contention or difficulties when values, ideas, perceptions, beliefs and expectations or desires may differ. And as such, there's a difference between having a difference in opinion and actually having a conflict in opinion. A conflict in opinion is when you're emotionally invested in the outcome. Now you are so connected to driving your point of view through, regardless whether it is the right one or not, and you're blinded by that emotional intensity from actually observing things in an objective way.
And looking and observing on the media side, today there is a huge problem in Egypt, which is satellite channels and its effect on people. And like you mentioned, it's based on views. It's more or less the media in Egypt is not being objective. They're being biased more or less. And it's missing the placing the facts rather than placing emotional views or perspectives that are projected on specific incidents or sort of events that is happening around us.
You cannot disconnect what people say as an external environment from what internally they feel, which is the internal environment. When I sit down and I have a discussion with you, both of us, if we have the credibility of friendship, then we may have so many differences in opinions, and yet neither of us would feel the threat of a difference in opinion. However, if the basic ingredients that connect us, a basic sense of trust, of friendship, of love, of any kind of a socially cohesive connection, then we will mistrust each other. And it's ridiculous to keep talking about very critical situations and highly sensitive situations among people who mistrust each other. The outcome will never come out positively. It's a myth. It will not happen. It may happen through negotiating interests. You give a little bit from this part, I will give a little bit from this part, but it's got nothing to do with coming up with a kind, selfless vision that can actually drive the process to the benefit of the society in general.
But doctor, we seem to be lacking the sense or the culture of the dialogue, especially after the 25th of January revolution. How can we gain this? Maybe in the near future, please.
Yeah, this is a great question, because you guys know that the moment the revolution took place, everybody's talked about, let's engage in dialogue. Let's engage in dialogue. Everybody kept repeating the word dialogue.
They keep engaging in monologues. Everyone's talking on its own.
And it's a monologue.
Yeah.
It's never. Rarely have I seen examples of a dialogue, except I have to admit, among the younger generation, the youth of this country have, in many ways, in many examples I've experienced personally through my work, professionally, or through personal relationships, where the youth have actually shown examples of this dialogue. They are sincere. They have ideal ways of how they want to build the new world. They don't want to look at their past and let it dictate the future for them. So in such way, they have a driving hope versus the hopelessness that tends to seep into human character as they get older. So how
maybe
can
as they get in power?
I'm sorry?
And maybe as they get in power, they seem to be lacking the one another.
And you know, it is natural. It's a skill that you build and you acquire, just like driving skills, just like public speaking skills, just like having a properly happy marriage. We really, these things have become a science that we need to engage in, simply because humans are no longer a very complicated individuals, and the fact that we keep minimizing the complexity of the Egyptian man and woman, child and youth does not serve our purpose. We have to recognize how complex our culture has become. And the complexity comes in the differences in values, in the differences in the motivation, the differences of desires and ideals and hopes and dreams. These things are critical. I mean, before you talk about managing people, you have to talk about managing the entity within people. Who are the people? Do you understand who the people are? They're not these silly characters you by watching movies and television. You see how simplified human beings are. And I think your younger generation is looking at these movies and this does not reflect the complexity that I have inside, and that's why I watch Western movies. They have that degree of complexity. I do address human issues and human thinking, human capacity. Very sensitive issues, but delicately. I hope we advance in that way. But how do you build that complexity? I'll tell you, the first rule that you have to observe is that you look at the person in front of you and decide, do you respect this individual? Do you have a basic recognition of their... Are you willing to compromise and reach a stage where you're saying, well, dialogue means I may have to give up my opinion. That this opinion that I've put on the table in front of you now, once I put it on the consultation tube, it does not belong to me anymore. It belongs to us. And as such, I'm completely dissociated from our achievement. It does not become, oh, it was Sam's idea, and such glorification of personal connection between the idea and the human being. That's silly. Nobody owns ideas. Nobody owns knowledge. Nobody owns science or religion. These are things that are a combination of human thinking and human endeavors to build society. So how could you possibly establish ownership? What's this copyright business about every idea? It's so silly. It's very selfish.
Yes, not only that, the opinions now are also IP, you know.
Absolutely. And you have lawyers for it,
Yes,
and you have
exactly.
entities, like we specialize in IP. And it's funny because human intellect is a universal ownership. And to prove my point, the challenges that are faced by humanity today are universal. If you look at AIDS, if you look at the environment problems, if you look at the borders and the immigration issues, if you
Even
look at
economy.
terrorism, they're all universal issues.
Yes,
They
very
don't
true.
belong to one group versus another. How can we solve them unless we truly engage in the same seat, realizing that our ship is sinking and it is our ship. It's not
Dr.
yours
Sam,
or
let me
mine.
share with you a problem that probably you have noticed over the social media, maybe Facebook and Twitter. This might be a sort of the modern type of dialogues that is going on the internet. So if you watch the recent political dialogues or even cultural dialogues between mainly youth and even adults, the dialogues on the Facebook, and it's documented, seems very awkward today. Again, the social media lacks the sort of interaction between two people. It lacks the voice and the body language. But again, what we are seeing and experiencing today on the social media is very harsh and intense way of dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. It is mistrusting, and it has all sort of component that is not a dialogue. It's just a public expression of inner anger. That's not dialogue. In order for you to have a dialogue, you must have two things established. One, you have to have some basic form of emotional management. I can't just spew whatever thoughts and ideas that come in. I feel like cussing someone, then I'll cuss them. This lack of emotional control is disastrous because it precipitates hatred in the other party. You just say, none of us wants to be insulted. And the moment I get insulted, I will become defensive. And no matter how valid your case is, no matter how true is your opinion, I will not listen to you. You have insulted me. And people are very big on dignity here. So the number one, you have to have that emotional management. Number two, which is maybe the source, and I do not want to minimize the complexity of issues that are going in Egypt today, but the number one issue that I see today is the intense and high level of stress. People are operating under tremendous amount of stress, and that alone by itself will blind any process of consultation, building of a new society. How can you have that amount of stress and operate and be kind enough to listen? We're sitting here, you and I, and we're exchanging in this beautiful dialogue. I have some nice sounds of water behind me listening, and we really want to do something good, so our vision is mutual, that we want to, and that's how we can have a successful dialogue. None of us is stressful, none of us feel threatened, and as such, people will enjoy this interaction, I hope. But if you take these components and insert them into our discussion, if I threaten you in any way, if I attack you in any way, the negativity of it will immediately be felt not just by you, but everyone around us.
Yes.
So these two things, when you ask me how can we have it today, these are the two things that we have to start with: emotional management and reduction in stress level.
But if you take the whole idea or the whole problem maybe to a more personal,
yes,
people within the family or the members of the family themselves seem to be not talking to each other anymore, seem to be talking to each other through Facebook or Twitter, such as what Sharif said.
Yeah.
How can we develop the culture of dialogue within the family itself?
This is funny. I just read it, the net was cut off, and I discovered how beautiful the people that I live with. We do get disconnected that way. And don't look at it as, oh, it's a bad thing. Look, what is it that I'm not getting from the family, so I'm not paying attention to them? I mean, this problem started out even the farmer out of the farmland to come to the mega cities in order for them to earn a living.
Yes.
We ripped them out of that environment of family, cutting down these strong bonds that should not be interrupted. And what happens? We started making money and financial means. While the reality is you make money to establish a happy, balanced human life and a family life. The two problems that I mentioned to you earlier about dialogue are actually experienced in the home. If I don't solve them within the home, if I don't experience emotional management within the family, I can't express them outside. It has to. I'm looking for this leader who would stand up and says, I am for the Egyptian family. I will build the dynamics of this Egyptian family. I will contribute to a life of health, mental health, educational, all these aspects of the family, and that's my focus, and that's how we can build a country.
Finally, I'd like to ask you about the political scene. Maybe how different is the political dialogue from what you were speaking about now?
Oh, I think most of us sense it's quite different.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that
because it seems to be failing over the past couple of months, or maybe the past 2 years. So,
yeah.
In your opinion, how would this be turned into a successful political dialogue for the sake of Egypt?
Two things. You must the West has gone through as well in the 50s and the 60s. We're now moving into the era, and I would even dare to say the 70s and the 80s, on the focus of the leader does what, the group does what the leader says they should do. Now we're becoming, in the era of the knowledge worker, we're becoming the social fabric. There's a country now that has no borders, it has no land, it has no army. Its citizens believe in human declaration for human rights, and it topples government. We call it Facebook. It's a country. It has citizens from, you know,
Yes.
all the countries of the world. A country is an idea, and the idea based on human relationships.
Yes.
So, the number one thing that's happening in the West now in the past 30, 40 years is being obsessed with building trust. How can you build trust in a society? Before you have any dialogue, you must have trust.
Yes.
Number two, which is a critical issue, is to build that exists in society upon which you can build everything else. You must agree on certain values. For example, you know, the equality between men and right. This is a fundamental value you have to agree on universally. You can't negotiate this little one. Having universal education, paying attention of children. These are things that, without focusing on them, the basic unity of Egyptians, the basic unity. This is a country that has so many backgrounds and people coming from different places.
Yes.
Are we celebrating the diversity? No. We're hoping that there are homogeneous group all the time, and that's not real. You know, matching reality.
Yes.
So these values, once we agree on these, you can build anything else through the dialogue that's based on trust.
Right.
Dr. Sam Hindawy, the consultant of leaders and the administrative development, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for giving me
It's been
this
a pleasure.
opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Now it's time for a quick break, and we'll be right back again with you on My Crew.